Welcome to True Crime Lullaby, where truth lies between darkness and dawn. Out here in the forest, the world feels quiet. The fire's crackling. The air outside is cool and still. A reminder that even in the most peaceful places, shadows can linger. Tonight, we're delving into a case that truly baffled investigators for years. We'll explore the known facts, theories, and lingering questions that surround this perplexing mystery. My aim, as always, is to simply present the narrative, allowing you to draw your own conclusions. Take a breath and get cozy by the fire. You're safe here. Settle in, and let's begin. The coast of Southern California has its own rhythm, a pulse that rises and falls with the tide. By early June of 1991, the ocean had already warmed to its summer hue, and the air smelled faintly of eucalyptus and salt. Newport Beach was beginning its golden season, long days, lingering evenings, and skies that stayed soft and blue until almost 9. In a quiet neighborhood a few miles from the water, a young woman named Denise Huber woke each morning to the sound of gulls and the steady hum of sprinklers. Hers was a gentle life, the kind that doesn't demand attention but holds meaning in the small details, the ritual of making coffee, feeding the family cat, checking the paper on the porch before work. Denise was 23, but there was a maturity to her that made her seem older in the best possible way. Her parents, Dennis and Ione, often said she had always been that way. Calm, dependable, with a heart as steady as her hands. They trusted her, not because she was obedient, but because she was grounded. Her friends often called her the anchor, the one who remembered birthdays, who offered rides home, who quietly looked out for others. She wasn't the kind of person who filled a room with her voice. She filled it with her presence. When she smiled, it was soft and deliberate, like a small light flickering on. Her room looked out over the garden. Pale blue curtains, a desk with sketches taped to the wall, a few novels stacked beside her bed. Denise had a love for art that was woven into her every day. Even her notebooks from school were lined with tiny drawings in the margins, faces, plants, the curve of a shoreline. She had studied art at Orange Coast College, finding joy not just in the act of painting, but in the quiet it brought her. Her professors said she worked slowly, deliberately, with a patience that most people her age hadn't yet learned. She saw the world through color, the faded turquoise of beach umbrellas, the deep rust of terracotta rooftops, the golden edges of a sunset cloud. Her parents said she noticed beauty in everything, that she could find something worth painting in a broken shell or a cracked sidewalk. Outside of her art, she lived simply. She worked part-time at a small retail shop where regular customers knew her by name. On her lunch breaks, she'd sit outside with a book or a sketch pad, drawing the outlines of strangers passing by. Life wasn't dramatic or fast. It was comfortable, textured, and familiar. Evenings were often spent with friends, quiet nights by the water, trips to cafes that stayed open late, the occasional concert that promised a bit of adventure. That year, she'd been listening to Morrissey almost every day. His lyrics, wistful, melancholy, poetic, felt like a reflection of her own gentle introspection. So when she and her friends got tickets to see him perform at the Irvine Meadows Amphitheater that June, it felt like the start of summer itself. Denise wasn't the type to chase excitement, but she loved music that stirred something inside her. She was shy about it, never one to sing aloud. Yet she kept her favorite tapes neatly arranged by her bed, rewinding songs that made her feel seen. Her parents were happy for her. They trusted her. They always had. She had plans for the future, though she didn't talk about them loudly. Maybe graduate school, maybe a small studio near the ocean where she could paint, teach, and build a quiet life. She was, as one of her friends later said, someone who felt like home. In the days leading up to the concert, life followed its usual rhythm. She worked her shifts, chatted with co-workers, called a friend to confirm plans for Sunday night. At home, the Hubers' evenings were ordinary. Dinner together, the television low in the background, the comfortable pattern of shared silence. No one could have known that these would be the last of the uncomplicated days. The world of Denise Huber was gentle and bright, and like the calm before a storm, it seemed built on the quiet assumption that tomorrow would come just like today. June 2nd, 1991, arrived bright and easy. The air shimmered over the asphalt, the Pacific rolled in lazy silver lines, and the hills beyond Irvine were dusted with gold. Denise spent the morning at home, unhurried, moving through her small rituals: coffee, the newspaper, the soft scrape of a paintbrush rinsed in a jar beside the sink. She had already laid out the clothes she'd wear that evening. Nothing elaborate, just neat and comfortable. The concert would be outdoors, and she wanted to feel free. By late afternoon, she met her friends, laughter rising between car doors and radio static. The drive to the amphitheater was familiar. Stretches of freeway bordered by blooming jacarandas, the smell of fuel and citrus mingling in the warm air. When the sun sank, the lights came alive. The amphitheater pulsed with sound, thousands of voices blending into a single trembling chorus. Denise stood among them, quiet but smiling, the music washing through her. In those moments, she was part of something larger than herself, the glow of a summer crowd, the steady beat of a song that felt like it might last forever. Hours later, when the final note faded and the crowd began to drift toward the exits, she said her goodbyes. She wasn't the type to linger. Home was close, and her parents would worry if she stayed out too late. Her car, a gray Honda Civic, waited under the parking lot lights, a small island of calm amid the shuffle of tires and laughter. She started the engine, the radio low, and pulled onto the highway. The night had cooled a little. The air through her open window carried the scent of sage and ocean salt. Headlights slipped past like fireflies. Newport Beach was 15 minutes away, but somewhere along that road, something happened. When dawn came, the Hubers' home remained unnaturally still. The kettle hissed, the morning light poured across the kitchen counter, but Denise's car space sat empty. Her mother hesitated before calling her name down the hall, the words sounding strange against the quiet. Her father stepped outside, scanning the street, expecting to see the familiar gray Honda turning the corner any second. They waited. Then they called friends, then the police. By noon, a patrol officer spotted the car, a modest, unremarkable vehicle on the shoulder of the Corona Del Mar freeway. The right front tire was flat, the doors were locked. Inside were her purse, wallet, and keys. The freeway roared beside it, indifferent and constant. There were no skid marks, no sign of struggle, just a silent car on a bright California morning. Investigators noted the details with clinical precision, but to the Hubers, every inch of that car screamed wrongness. Denise would have called. She would have walked to a gas station. She would have come home. The first hours of a disappearance are measured differently, each minute stretching thin, each sound amplified. The Hubers stood in their driveway long after the officers left, the sun slipping behind the houses, hope and dread twisting together in the dark. That night, search teams began combing the area. Volunteers gathered under portable floodlights, clutching flyers and flashlights. The police brought dogs. Helicopters traced slow arcs overhead. Reporters hovered at the edges, murmuring into microphones about the mystery of the missing young woman. Neighbors whispered theories that started as comfort and ended as fear. Maybe a hitchhiker, maybe a flat tire and the wrong passerby, maybe nothing at all. Inside the Huber house, the lights stayed on. Denise's mother couldn't bear the thought of her daughter coming home to darkness. Her father sat by the phone, writing down every lead the police shared. License numbers, descriptions, timelines that never lined up. The days blurred. Food lost its taste. Each ring of the telephone jolted their hearts, only to end in silence or sympathy. Newport Beach, so used to sunshine and safety, began to feel fragile. Parents warned daughters to keep their gas tanks full, to lock their doors, to call when they arrived anywhere. The sea still glittered, but the air felt different, charged with unease. For weeks, officers canvassed every inch of the freeway corridor. Nothing, not a shoe, not a scrap of fabric. The car was towed, examined, released. The investigation settled into the slow ache of waiting. Months passed. Flyers weathered on lampposts. Summer faded into fall. People still jogged along the boardwalk, still ordered coffee at the corner cafe, but the conversations faltered when someone mentioned her name. Denise's room remained untouched. Her mother dusted the dresser each morning, smoothing the same fold of the quilt. Her father mowed the lawn twice a week, as though the steady hum of the mower might keep the world from unraveling. Holidays came and went. One chair at the table stayed empty. They wrapped a small gift for her each Christmas, a tradition her mother couldn't bear to end. Birthdays were marked with flowers at the window and a candle lit before bed. By the second year, the case had cooled. Leads dried up, and new stories pushed hers from the front page. But the family never stopped calling, never stopped asking. To live in uncertainty is its own kind of grief, one that doesn't resolve, that hangs in the air like fog. The Hubers learned to breathe around it, to speak in half-sentences and what-ifs. Still, every night before turning off the lights, her mother left the porch lamp burning. Just in case. Part 3. The Years of Silence. The seasons circled back again, unbothered by the gap in one small house near the coast. Summer mornings still warmed the stucco walls. Fog still drifted in from the water before dawn. To the world beyond their front door, time moved forward. Inside the Huber home, it stalled. The investigation had dwindled to polite check-ins. A phone call from an officer now and then. A report mailed with the same words. No new leads at this time. The detectives who had once promised answers were reassigned. Files shifted from one desk to another, and still the Hubers waited. Denise's mother found tasks to fill the quiet. She ironed linens that did not need pressing. She clipped recipes she would never cook. Every few weeks she cleaned her daughter's car after it was returned from evidence. The smell of rubber and gasoline, a stubborn reminder of the last place Denise had been. Her father spent evenings in the garage, sorting and resorting his tools. When he couldn't sleep, he walked the neighborhood, the beam of his flashlight gliding over driveways, hedges, mailboxes, the same streets she had driven so many times. Neighbors learned to soften their voices. Some crossed the street rather than disturb the fragile calm of the house. Others brought casseroles that went uneaten, plates returned spotless but untouched. Grief makes people unsure of their footing. It rearranges social gravity. The Hubers did not resent the distance. They understood it was born of helplessness. Each year on the anniversary of her disappearance, they drove to the stretch of the Corona Del Mar freeway where the car had been found. The shoulder there was narrow, the traffic relentless, but they would stand together for a few minutes, the roar of engines filling the silence that language could not. As the months blurred into years, the police files gathered dust. Tips trickled in, sightings, rumors, stories from strangers who swore they had seen her in another city. Each call sent a tremor of hope through the household. Each one ended the same way. Denise's friends tried to keep her close in memory. They met once a year at the pier, leaving flowers on the sand, talking about small things, her sketches, the way she laughed at her own mistakes, the careful way she drove. For them, she remained suspended at 23, forever gentle, forever young. The Hubers' garden, once bright with color, began to grow wild. Ivy crept up the fence, roses tangled into thorn. Her father could not bring himself to cut them back. Her mother said the overgrowth made her feel less alone. Sometimes on sleepless nights, they imagined the sound of her car pulling into the driveway, the crunch of tires on gravel, the soft slam of a door. The mind, when starved of truth, learns to feed itself on possibility. Years would pass before chance intervened. Part 4. The Desert Find. By the summer of 1994, the story of Denise Huber had retreated into the quiet corners of memory. In Newport Beach, the porch light at the Huber home still burned each night, a small, stubborn ritual. To passers-by, it was just a lamp. To her parents, it was the only signal they could still send into the dark. Hundreds of miles east, in the high, sun-bleached hills of Prescott, Arizona, a house painter named Bill Miller spent a sweltering Saturday at a local swap meet. The market spread across a patch of asphalt behind a grocery store, rows of tables sagging with rusted tools, cracked dishes, and the smell of fried dough. Heat shimmered above the parking lot like a veil. Among the clutter stood a Ryder moving truck, its once yellow panels half covered in streaks of white paint. To a painter's eye, something about it felt wrong, the brushwork uneven, the job unfinished. Miller drifted closer, curious, and through a gap in the back door saw the edge of a large chest freezer, sealed with black tape. Buckets of paint surrounded it, stacked with unusual care. He stepped back, uneasy. Painters are attuned to disorder, spilled thinner, warped lids, the way people leave things when they aren't thinking. This scene looked arranged, deliberate, secretive. That night he mentioned it to a friend in the sheriff's office. The next morning deputies came to look for themselves. When they opened the truck, the desert wind pressed against them, hot and dry. Inside the freezer was what Miller had feared, human remains, carefully wrapped and preserved in the cold. The registration led to John Famolaro, a house painter who had moved from Laguna Hills, California 3 years earlier, the same summer Denise disappeared. He lived alone on a wooded lot at the edge of town, his house shaded by pine. To neighbors, he was polite, forgettable. He mowed his lawn at dusk and rarely spoke more than a greeting. Detectives served a warrant. Inside the home, they found the chill of a window unit working against the desert heat and the faint chemical smell of paint thinner. Boxes lined the walls of the garage, rope, plastic sheeting, hardware. In a corner, a workbench dusted with sawdust and a hammer stained a dark, unmistakable color. In one box lay a driver's license, a set of keys, a bracelet, a name, Denise Huber. News traveled from Prescott to California faster than anyone could have prepared for. When the phone rang in the Huber home that July, the world they had carefully balanced for 3 years tilted. The waiting was over, but the not knowing that had kept them breathing was gone too. For a moment there was relief, the end of the limbo. Then came the weight of finality. Their daughter had been found, not wandering, not rescued, but preserved in silence by a man who had moved on with his life as if she were an object packed away. The officers who had once searched the freeways called again, their voices older now, subdued. The case that had haunted their files had a resolution, if not a reason. When Denise's remains were brought back to California, the sky over the coast was overcast, the air heavy with the kind of heat that muffles sound. Friends lined the church steps, faces drawn but grateful that she was finally home. Reporters waited across the street, their lenses lowered out of respect. The service was small. There were no headlines inside, no spectacle, just photographs of a young woman smiling at a beach, paintings she had made, a bouquet of wildflowers from her mother's garden. Her parents sat together, hands clasped, the silence between them the closest thing to comfort left. The ocean beyond the cemetery was calm that day. The gulls circled lazily above the cliffs, their cries lost to the wind. Somewhere below, the tide pulled back and returned again, indifferent and eternal. Famolaro's trial began 3 years later. The evidence was overwhelming, the verdict certain. The sentence, death, arrived like punctuation at the end of a sentence already written in grief. For the Hubers, it changed little. No justice system could return what had been taken or quiet the echo of those lost years. They retreated from public life. Reporters stopped calling. The world folded around their absence. In Newport Beach, the sea breeze carried the same salt and sunlight as before, but something in the rhythm of the town had shifted. Every generation has a story that reminds it of the fragility beneath the familiar. Denise's became that story. The reminder that even under palm trees and endless sky, darkness can hide in plain view. Decades have passed since then. The freeway where her car once rested has been repaved, the shoulder widened, guardrails bright and new. Each evening, cars stream homeward under sodium lights, the air thick with summer dust. None of those drivers know the exact patch of asphalt where a young woman's life diverged from its path. At the Huber house, the porch light still burns. The bulb has been changed countless times, but the ritual remains. It casts a small circle of warmth over the front steps, a beacon that no longer asks for her return, but simply marks that she was once here. In her old room, the blue curtains have faded. The sketchbook on the desk is closed, its pages yellowing at the edges. Dust softens the outlines of her brushes. The glass jars that once held water turned cloudy with time. Her parents have aged quietly. They walk the beach some mornings, watching the horizon the way one watches for weather. They speak of her rarely now, not out of forgetfulness, but reverence, as if words might disturb the fragile peace they have built. When night falls over Newport Beach, the world looks almost the same as it did in 1991. The waves glint under the moon, the streetlights hum, the palm fronds rustle against one another. Yet something remains in the air, a thin vibration, an echo. It lives in the hollow sound of tires on freeway concrete, in the salt smell that drifts inland, in the glow of a single porch lamp. It whispers the name of a girl who once painted the world in gentle colors, who loved the sea and the quiet and believed in tomorrow. No one hears it clearly, but if you stand very still and the wind is right, you might catch it for a moment. A breath, a memory, the faint impression of a life interrupted yet somehow still moving through the air. And then the sound is gone, folded back into the night, leaving only the low hum of the ocean and the quiet certainty that some stories never truly end.